Hello there and welcome to episode 21 of the Unqualified Opinion Sports Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Marco Yerkovich. Thank you for tuning in. Today, we're joined by our usual panelists.
I'm Paul Hires, and it's about that time of year again, boys. Football season is just wrapped up, so that means it's time for baseball.
Hey guys, it's Will Barman. You know what me and JJ Redick have in common besides a sweet three-point shot? Both love Mumford & Sons. It's crazy.
Wow, really brings the world together. And I'm Tim Seifel. On today's episode, we will be giving our reactions from the Super Bowl, discussing NBA All-Star reserves, the MLB finally, and much more.
All right, and also don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your own unqualified opinions in the comment section down below.
Also, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to check us out on Spotify and Instagram. The links are in the description below.
All right, with that, let's get into the episode. And the big thing here to discuss, Super Bowl 54, our reactions.
Let's
many
go.
things going on.
It was one of the better Super Bowls we've seen in a while.
Oh yeah.
Especially last year. Last year's Super Bowl Rams-Patriots was just a dull affair.
I have to admit, yes, it was a defensive matchup, but yeah, pretty boring.
Defensive matchup is, more often than not, the excuse people used to say my favorite team played in a boring game.
Yeah, it was. Hey, it's pretty. It was pretty boring.
But
no, this was an excellent game.
Andy Reid looked like he had a good plan. The Chiefs rebounded really well from some struggles early on. Garoppolo struggled, not entirely his fault. And the most shocking moment of all, Paul Hires, lifelong Chiefs fan, was seen smiling, mind you, after the game.
Wow, that is almost a Belichickian level of sighting there. So Andy Reid is known for his career playoff pitfalls. Tim, how do you think this changes his narrative and his Hall of Fame case and just how he'll be remembered with this performance?
I mean, honestly, it boosts his Hall of Fame potential. Obviously, he's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame, especially if he puts another one under his belt. But, I think this really shows how good Patrick Mahomes is, how good Eric Bieniemy is. I was really surprised that none of the teams that needed a coach didn't go for Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs. Because towards the end of the game, they outplayed the 49ers defense. The 49ers defense looked gassed, and I just loved the way that they were able to strategize that. And obviously, Patrick Mahomes was Patrick freaking Mahomes. So it definitely boosts his Hall of Fame potential, and it definitely breaks the curse for now.
So now looking at the Super Bowl MVP, Patrick Mahomes didn't have his best game, but he played well enough. And especially when they needed him, he played extremely well. Will, your thoughts on the MVP's performance?
I don't think he should have won MVP, honestly. I think Damian Williams had a much better game than him. I think it was a lot more important in the bigger moments. Mahomes led the team. He rebounded nice from his 2 interceptions at the start. But I think Williams was the guy who was there when you needed him most. And you can't forget, Super Bowl MVP, not necessarily for your team's best player. It's for whoever came through when needed them, and that was Damian Williams. Also, to back up Tim, Eric Bieniemy, please come to Detroit next year when Matt Patricia flames out.
When he goes 4-12. Paul, your thoughts overall just on the game, the Chiefs' performance, all things involved?
Yeah, and backing all you guys on what you said, I mean, it was a great game. Probably the best Super Bowl besides maybe the Eagles and the Patriots. That was a really good game. But probably the best Super Bowl I've seen in the last 10 years or so. And I'm not just saying that as a Chiefs fan. I think overall it was a great game. And then what Tim said about the coaching throughout the game, I think it was really key that we saw Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers offense were having mild to moderate success towards the beginning of the game. But those last few drives, they hardly got anything because they said, all right, look, he's not doing as well if we bring a couple extra guys on the blitz. They figured out how to stop their offense, and that was a huge key, as well as coming back on offense.
All right, yeah, so you kind of talked about how the 49ers had an upswing, an uptick in offense, and then as the game went forward, it seemed like the Chiefs, at least personnel, if not also the defense, had the 49ers figured out. So just kind of talking about, in perspective, understanding Kyle Shanahan's history in Super Bowls, obviously blew the 25-point lead with Atlanta against the Patriots. Did San Francisco lose this game more than the Chiefs won it?
To be fair first, I really feel like Kyle Shanahan, he can't take all of the blame because he wasn't head coach with the Falcons. He was the offense coordinator, so he does have a degree of responsibility, but he doesn't deserve as much of the credit for that meltdown in that Super Bowl. However, I don't know why he abandoned the run game. It was working really well against the Chiefs. Garoppolo, he made some good throws. I think for a while there, he impressed me a lot more than he had all season. But when they asked him to make those big throws, he couldn't deliver. And again, the running game was doing just fine. I don't know why they suddenly shied away from it. That really made no sense. So I think as much as the Chiefs, it took them a while to get there. You can make the argument for both. The 49ers could have kept doing what they did and probably won, but the Chiefs also picked it up in a really significant way that I think would have helped them at least come close to winning, even if the 49ers had stayed their course.
So, right, yeah. So the 49ers had the ball up by 10 with 7 minutes remaining. Tim, just your thoughts on, again, that question, but also then within the context of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 49ers, saying that the 49ers blew it, illegitimizes how good Patrick Mahomes was down the stretch. And, the 49ers have a great defense. That never changed. But even though they got away from their game, why Kyle Shanahan got away from the run, I don't know. But they had opportunities. There were open guys, and especially towards the end of the game, there was an open receiver, I believe, with like 4 minutes left in the game, 3 minutes.
Yeah, he missed Emmanuel Sanders down the line.
Everybody did their job. It was a great play call. Just Jimmy G wasn't as clutch as Patrick Mahomes. And I think that can be stated more, that it wasn't as much Kyle Shanahan's fault with the way that he strategized towards the end of the game. I just think players didn't come up as clutch as the Chiefs did. And the Chiefs earned every bit of this game. On the defensive end, on the offensive end, Patrick Mahomes was sensational towards the end of the game. And to say that the 49ers blew it illegitimizes that.
Yeah, there is, though, the factor that, again, you're up by 10 with 7 minutes left. You got to run the ball. I'm not saying that the 49ers blew it, but the Chiefs definitely, I don't think, could have won the game, or it wouldn't have been as easy for them to win the game had the 49ers not imploded offensively in the last quarter and a half of the game.
It wouldn't have been 31-20.
Yeah.
But I still think that the Chiefs would have found a way to get it done. But
I think they could have, yes.
Even if they didn't, it's all of the small decisions made. And Kyle Shanahan, he's a great coach, but there are definitely going to be a lot of questions from now on about why he decided to go away from the run.
He could become the new Reed in his whole playoff curse. Again, it took Andy Reid as a head coach, it took him 20 years. He's been a head coach at Philadelphia from 99 to 2012, and he's been in KC since 13. This is his 20th season as a head coach, just now getting his first Super Bowl victory. That's nothing, to be the detriment of how good of a coach he is, but obviously the postseason success hasn't been there. That could be the new thing for Shanahan. It's way too early to tell. But anybody else have thoughts on Kyle Shanahan's coaching? I know, obviously, you could, there's a million hypotheticals you could say. You could say Andy Reid went for it twice on 4th and 1. If they hadn't have gotten those, we'd be saying maybe the same thing about Andy Reid right now.
Look, I believe in Kyle Shanahan. I'm happy Andy Reid got a championship. He really deserved it. He put in his dues. He did a lot of good stuff for the league, for the game. And but Shanahan's young. He has a really bright future. I think it's way too early to try to saddle him with some of the same choker labels.
Oh yeah,
Reid, because you can argue Reid kind of earned it because he had a lot more time to lose a lot more big games. Shanahan,
as we said, 20 years.
Yeah, I think with Kyle Shanahan, I don't like putting there's a curse on it just because
it's an overused.
There's different personnel.
It's an overused narrative in sports too.
Yeah, it is for sure.
It's just a cliche at this point. I really don't like the curse talks all the time.
And I think one of the biggest differences between college and the NFL is in college you can kind of make your team according to what you want to do, but in the NFL you have the players that you have. You're going to have to make do with what type of players that you have, and if you just have to put your team together. And if some aren't maybe on board as much on that, you kind of have to improvise. But I think, Kyle Shanahan gave the 49ers as much time to, or as much room to win as possible, especially towards down the stretch where they had many opportunities blown.
Okay, so I know this is projecting a little bit, and it's hard to say, obviously, based on free agency and the draft and all these things, but do we see the 49ers having a similar Super Bowl hangover than the Rams did with McVay and company?
No, because people forget that the Rams lost a lot of linemen. That's really what hurt the most. Their starting center retired. They had some injuries. Goff didn't play terrible. I think Goff's pretty underrated. I'm not saying he's elite, but he gets a lot more criticism than he deserves. But the 49ers aren't really supposed to lose any significant players. The only guy who's a free agent is Jimmy Ward, and Emmanuel Sanders, and I feel like they'll probably bring both of them back. Also, it's a really strong draft class for receivers, and they got some good cornerbacks and safeties in there. They can just kind of bolster up pretty much all their skill positions they might need. I think the 49ers are going to be potentially a stronger roster next year, especially as their young guys get better. However, the question now is going to be what the effects are of an offseason and people talking about how Garoppolo shouldn't be their quarterback anymore.
You know, that is a problem. He is making a lot of money, but as you said, the 49ers are in a good position, but they are, and let's be frank, the NFC West is the toughest division in the NFL right now.
Oh yeah, easily. I think right now with Seattle looking up, I think they had a lot of injuries that plagued their season and really affected how well they were able to perform down towards the end of the season. And then even Arizona, I mean, they're getting better. Obviously, they're not real good right now, but they have a lot of potential as they're really young. And then the Rams are always going to be a team that you can win against or lose against. Right now, especially this past season, it was kind of inconsistent, but before that, they were a juggernaut. Like, they were really,
and they
really
still
good.
have pretty much all of the same offensive personnel there. And I just want to touch on one more thing before we move on to the commercials and halftime show portion of this episode. I just want to commend the NFL for the way this game was officiated and the speed of it. I understand this is probably some of the most running we've had in a Super Bowl, so it felt like it was going faster, but I thought it was really impressive, the constraint that the officials held. Obviously, there was a lot of false start and offside penalties, but those are things you can't ignore. But holding, I think there was maybe one or two holding penalties. Do you guys have any thoughts on just how it was officiated, the speed of the game?
The way things have been lately, you're almost lucky if you're the NFL if you can get through a major game like this without having to hear about people complain on the internet for the next 3 years about how badly you blew a call or this should have been this way or just whatever. There's a ton of complaining about officiating, and just the fact that there's no major grievances anyone can have with this game is a good sign. It was a very clean match.
I thought the game speed was fine, but the build up, for me, it's a little much when you have the national anthem and I was literally sitting there for 20 minutes, kind of waiting for the game to start.
That's just something you have to expect, I guess. That's when I just don't watch.
Yeah.
I don't tune in till later in the broadcast, I guess.
And I think the officiating was good. The one thing I kind of want to talk about was there was a pass interference call on one of the 49ers defenders when their throw was to Kelsey in the end zone. It was a good call, but I just don't like the fact that they call it a spot foul or that's
a larger discussion about the rules.
It should be a 15-yard penalty, so I have to cringe when they put them on the 2-yard line because it seems like you can just throw it in the end zone and get on the 2-yard line. I think they still
a lot of what they do.
They still would have scored a touchdown because the guy was wide open on the touchdown, but I just felt like that was a little bad the way they do that.
All right, so let's move into more kind of the non-sports section.
Because your boys love theatrics on this podcast.
Right, we do. Anybody have any favorite commercials?
Oh, yeah. I think Snickers did a really good job with their campaign. And I think also Tide.
Oh, the
always
Charlie
reoccurring.
Day.
I loved that. But the best was definitely the Jeep Groundhog Day commercial. I think bringing in Bill Murray.
Bill Murray does not look great.
Day.
He does not look good.
I mean, he's old. He's getting old, so obviously he's gonna look worse. But I think it was really good, especially timing wise during the season. It's Groundhog Day.
Yeah,
So.
worked out.
Dear
no,
God,
I
by the
agree.
way.
The Tide ad was great with Charlie Day. It was hilarious.
Dear God, was Google's ad depressing. And I watched this at a fraternity watching party. So it's going to take a lot for like any emotion to come out of that, because nothing gets, it's a jokey fun. It's like us. It's a jokey fun environment. No one's taking anything too seriously. Like, we're making fun of commercials the way us four usually make fun of stuff. But no, there was just a room full of dudes just like, dear God, this is really, really sad.
I also feel bad because on my YouTube videos for like 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, you get the little 5-second prompt and then skip ad. And every time I got that ad, I skipped it, and I kind of felt bad because then when I saw it on the Super Bowl, I was like, oh dang, that's a really powerful ad.
Yeah, there were quite a few good ones. Google, you mentioned, was pretty good. Doritos is always up there. I think this year was a little not as good, but it was still in the top 10. And Jason Momoa. And,
Oh,
the fake arms.
That was awesome.
That was great.
especially the like he was trying to do bench press there at the end. But yeah, I gotta agree with Tim. I like the Jeep one a lot. I didn't necessarily get the reference, but I still thought it was the
Never
best.
seen Groundhog's Day?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a pretty solid season of commercials, I guess. There weren't any like huge failures this year. It was kind of like the
Speaking of
Super Bowl
huge
itself, pretty clean.
failures, you guys want to talk about the halftime show?
Oh, that was not a huge failure, Marco.
No, I thought it was pretty good. It was
Marco,
pretty good. Yeah.
excellent. It
Yeah.
was excellent, Marco.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of Latin pop, you know.
I'm
Marco, hips don't lie.
I'm
That's a
indifferent about it.
Shakira
I think it's kind of a controversial topic, especially with what's surrounding the Super Bowl. As we know, the Super Bowl is one of the biggest events where human trafficking is just everywhere. And so I think a lot of people are making connections to and if you want to, you can obviously turn off the TV during the Super Bowl halftime show. But I think a lot of people are kind of uprising about it just because of the setting that they're in and how, the Super Bowl is one of where human trafficking is the worst.
I don't necessarily have a problem with the content. I mean, they can put anything on. I don't care what the concert is about.
It was a better show.
It's just I'm not a fan of that type of music. That was my only complaint.
I will say it was a better show. Like all jokes aside, it was a better show than we've had in a while. I mean, like, not a huge Latin pop listener either. That's our boy Jared. But I don't know. The last couple, like the Coldplay one, was boring. The Justin Timberlake one was boring. Like, this was at least an exciting show. Big fan.
Yeah, and I actually had
Shout
a
out to
timer
Shakira.
going. I had a timer going from clock hitting 0 in the first half to kickoff of the second half. 32 minutes. They wheel out that whole stage, do a whole concert. Obviously, they cut to the Fox host like during the transition parts and had a few commercials. It only took a half hour. That was the most impressive part of the halftime show for me. Just the logistics of the whole thing to get it done that quickly.
Yeah, I wasn't really watching it. I just had a feeling like, why do you need so many backup dancers? Like, why do you need 50 or 60
I don't want to see
people?
backup dancers, man. I want to see Shakira and J-Lo. Come
Like,
on.
It's okay if you have a few, but like 50 or 60 is too many. I'm sorry.
Paul hires
Let's
the
go ahead and
enemy
move
of
on.
backup dancers everywhere.
But I think the one thing I think we can all agree on was whether it was commercials or just the spectacle of the halftime show or the game itself, one of the better Super Bowls we've had in a while.
Yeah. And to be fair, the Super Bowl, I know last year was kind of a snooze fest. It wasn't the best. But we have had quite a few solid Super Bowls. You guys mentioned 52, 51 with Atlanta and the Patriots, Super Bowl 48 with Seattle and New England, 49. Obviously, the Mario Manningham and both the New England, New York Super Bowls, the Baltimore,
Let's just
San
mention
Francisco
all the
one.
Patriots Super Bowl.
I mean,
Baltimore-
they're all pretty interesting to be fair.
Baltimore 49ers.
Baltimore
probably my favorite
49ers.
Super Bowl.
Boston fan, it is interesting.
I mean,
To
to be
people
fair,
who watch the Patriots every single year in the Super Bowl, it is refreshing to finally see a matchup without Tom Brady.
I
and
will
the
say that is
Patriots.
refreshing for people, but you have to admit, whether they win or lose, every Super Bowl that the Patriots are in, something crazy happens. Something wild always happens. But yes, it is refreshing to see new people in the Super Bowl, although I have a feeling that we're going to be seeing the Chiefs and the 49ers in a lot of Super Bowls to come in the future. So now we're going to move into our NBA discussion. The All-Star reserves were announced. We're just going to go over that really quickly. Obviously, All-Star weekend coming up very soon. So the Western Conference All-Star reserves from the Rockets, Russell Westbrook, Trailblazers, Damian Lillard, Thunder, Chris Paul, from the Jazz, Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, from the Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, and from the Pelicans, Brandon Ingram. Your guys' thoughts, snubs, complaints? Let it fly.
I'll break down West first. Dame obviously deserves it. Gobert, it's about time he made an All-Star game.
For real.
He's a likely candidate to win Defensive Player of the Year, which would be a three-peat. And I get that on offense, he's still kind of a liability at times. But still, I mean, come on. I don't know how this is his first All-Star bid. Donovan Mitchell deserved it. Jokic deserved it. Then you break it down to Westbrook, Chris Paul, Brandon Ingram. All deserving candidates, but you can make a really solid argument Devin Booker deserves to be in over all three of them. I'd say I'd put Paul highest among that number because he really has helped carried an Oklahoma City team. We've talked about them a lot because who thought they would be here?
I thought they'd be in the lottery, to be fair.
I thought they'd be like hovering near playoff contention, but I thought they'd be a 10th or a 9th just because I trust Chris Paul and Danilo. I've been high on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for a while, but no, Paul deserves that credit more than any of them. And Westbrook, I'd probably take him out. He hasn't been bad except by Westbrook standards, but there's got to be some more deserving guys. And then if you're going to talk about teams with losing records, because that was a big knock people made about Booker.
Right.
Ingram.
Yeah,
he's been a hyped.
He hasn't been special.
He's been a hyped up. He's averaging like 25 a game. That's good numbers. The Pelicans are really making a charge up the rankings, but I don't know. I feel like Ingram's just
No, Ingram doesn't.
I feel like that's almost a product of hype.
Yeah,
his numbers are worse than Booker, but the difference I think is people have been wanting Ingram to be the next Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I agree. I agree in the West. Booker and maybe also Paul George are probably your main snubs. Tim, your thoughts on the Western Conference reserves?
Yeah, I mean, I think Will pretty much covered most of it. I think with Paul George, he was obviously
missed
injured.
A lot of games.
He missed a lot of games, and I think that's a big reason why he was not in. But I think Devin Booker, that's the guy for me.
Yeah, who are we taking out? Who are we taking out then?
I think Westbrook. Yeah,
I would say Westbrook, but probably Brandon Ingram because Westbrook at least is in a playoff team and he's putting up really solid numbers.
I'm still more intrigued to see Ingram play in the All-Star game. And this guy wasn't really an big All-Star candidate, but you can honestly make the argument that Jrue Holidays have been a much bigger part of the Pelicans' success than Ingram has.
Yeah, so I would say Ingram probably for me. So now let's move into the East reserves. So from Miami, we have Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler. From the Celtics, we have Jason Tatum. From the 76ers, Ben Simmons. From the Bucks, Khris Middleton. From the Pacers, Domantas Sabonis. And from the Raptors, Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, I mean...
Kyle Lowry made it, Marco.
I think
it's embarrassing.
It's really...
We're not doing this again, Marco.
I think we can all see where the mix-up is. You know, I think Bradley Beal should have been in there. I mean, when you're averaging 29 points a game... 45% shooting percentage.
Yeah, if you're going to have Trae Young in there, then you better have Bradley Beal.
Trae Young is the third worst defensive player in the NBA overall out of all players. He is awful on the defensive side.
And Bradley Beal is carrying the Wizards to almost playoff contention. They're a few games back. I think the Magic are the 8th seed. Who's the second best player on the Wizards? Davis Bertans?
First of all, Davis Bertans has been one of the top 3-point shooters. He's averaging 15 a game. I'll give some love to my boy there. But if you look at advanced metrics, Bradley Beal is playing terribly on defense. People didn't expect
not as bad as Trae Young.
Not as bad as Trae Young, but he's bottom 10. People don't realize
because of his defense. That is the reason why he did not make it in. It's because
he hasn't. I don't know. I still think he should have been in, but people are saying his defense is elite. It is at his peak. However,
Who do you replace then?
He's looked pretty unengaged.
It's got to be Kyle Lowry, right? If you're going to put Bradley Beal in, it's got to be Kyle.
Jason Tatum isn't even the best.
Jason Tatum is playing ridiculously well for the third best team in the East.
Jason Tatum isn't even the Celtic I think should have made it. That brings in my next point.
Jaylen Brown?
Jaylen Brown's been much better than Jason Tatum.
That's a fair point.
Also, I'll give some Simmons deserves it. Simmons is really underrated.
I don't think
if you look at what
he's underrated is he's rated.
The man can't hit outside the paint.
All people ever talk about is how overrated he is. if you look at his physically, what he can do at his size, the way his basketball IQ is off the charts. He can't shoot. That's his fault. It's not that he can't do it. He's just not trying. That's not a valid excuse.
He's hurting his team, though.
He is hurting his team because of the spacing, but at the same time, you could argue that if he was on a different team constructed around him, he'd be a lot better. Adebayo really deserves it, obviously. Middleton, too. But the big one I want to talk about quick is my boy Domantas Sabonis, who is, like Oladipo, has emerged from being a cast-off for the Thunder to becoming an all-star with Indiana. If you look at his stats, it's 18 points a game. That would be 4 assists a game, which is an excellent mark for big man.
Almost 13 rebounds a game.
He's played very rebounds.
Well. He's shooting the 3. He's a great passer. He's totally a deserving all-star. If I had to take one out, probably Tatum for Jaylen Brown, maybe Lowry for Beal. However, again, he's a good defender, but he's just kind of seems checked out of Washington altogether, honestly.
I mean, who wouldn't? One more thing I want to touch on with the East reserves. I'm not saying Middleton is not a good player, but do we think maybe Giannis's elevated play and Milwaukee's record made the NBA voters feel obligated to put a second Milwaukee player in?
No,
Your thoughts, Tim?
no.
We've been talking about
Middleton
this for
is
weeks.
the best defensive player in the league right now. He is ranked number 1. He is the reason why their defense is so good because he's able to take out the best guy.
Tim, this is like the 3rd week in a row we've had to talk about how underrated Middleton is while Marco sits over there in his chair
Drinking Aquafina water as if he's prestigious.
No one who drinks Aquafina water is prestigious. Drink Fiji. Drink Fiji. Moving on. I know we've planned to talk a bit about All-Star Weekend in general. Pat Connaughton's about to be in the dunk contest.
Dude.
And I thought that was ridiculous, but when I Googled it, he's got a 44 vert, and I saw videos of him like a year ago in practice hitting 360s and windmills. I don't think he's going to win, but like,
no, yeah.
At least watching that hype tape proved to me that he's worth being in this contest.
Yeah, next week we're going to get into the dunk contest, all the other stuff from All-Star Weekend, like make our predictions and everything. But any other complaints about the reserves selections or the process of selection?
My only main complaint is that you keep on bringing down Khris Middleton.
I'm not saying he's a bad player.
He is the best defender in the league.
Will this travesty stop?
I wasn't doing it. I was asking if you guys thought
against Marko Jurkovic, guys.
I'm not saying I think I put Khris Middleton on my ballot. I was just asking what you guys thought, because this is kind of a big point of contention, because he's one of those guys that doesn't have the name brand yet. Like, there's a lot of guys that people would just throw in, like they're gonna throw in
Bradley Beal,
right, because he's been there before. But I think Middleton is probably finally established himself as a consistent, like, annual All-Star.
He dropped a 50.
A 51, yeah. That was very
nuts.
impressive.
That's ridiculous performance, man. He's shown that he can ball without Giannis. You can't fault the man for being good enough as a complimentary piece. Come on now.
All right, so with that, let's move into what I believe to be probably our first MLB segment of the show ever, a massive trade between the Boston Red Sox and the LA Dodgers, with Mookie Betts and David Price moving to LA. Your guys' thoughts overall on the trade? Tim, you've got a lot to say about this.
Oh, yeah, this is my thing. The Dodgers definitely won this trade.
Big time.
They got a lot. And I know last season, a lot of people are going to look at David Price, and I believe he had a 4.87 ERA. Didn't look great. But in the first, I believe it was in 88 and a third innings, he had a 3.17 ERA. And right after then is when he started to kind of decline, and that was because he was playing through a cyst in his left wrist, I believe. And so obviously he was playing injured. That hurt his numbers, but he's been a solid veteran pitcher for a couple years now, quite a few years now. And since the Dodgers kind of missed out on the lottery with quite a few great pitchers going into free agency like Cole and Strasburg, I mean, this is a great pickup for them to have David Price and put him in the lineup. And then Mookie Betts, arguably one of the top 5 players overall in the past 4 or 5 years. You know, he's been fantastic. And especially 2 years ago, winning the AL MVP. You know, it really shows this team is going to be really, really good. The Dodgers lineup is going to be lethal, and they picked up a great veteran at the pitcher position.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty undisputed that LA won this trade. So let's take a look at it league wide. Will, do you think that LA is the best team in the league and the title favorites at this point?
Well, actually, the first thing I want to talk about was I wanted to talk about Red Sox and Twins specifically first, because first, I do think the Dodgers get that title. I don't think that's much of a debate, simply because in a league where for some stupid reason they don't have a salary cap, if you have the most money, you're probably going to win the most games. So Dodgers probably have that one in the bag. But what does this say about the Red Sox as a franchise? Because the rumor I've been hearing is that fans feel like ownership is just, at this point, just trying to stay under luxury tax. And people talk about luxury tax a lot in the media, but generally, if an owner's very committed to your team, he'll be willing to eat a bit of that luxury tax bill up. If anyone doesn't know, that's it's a benchmark for how much money you can spend on contracts. And once you go over that, your owner has to start paying for it out of pocket. The Red Sox, though, really look like they're just kind of giving up on this one and trying to stay under luxury tax. They did pick up Alex Verdugo, who's a pretty solid player, and Bruce Dargatorial, who is an awesome prospect for my Minnesota Twins. 102-mile-per-hour fastball, still young, so we don't know how it'll develop. Last thing I'll say before I turn it back over to our more experienced baseball guys, that I was happy to see the Twins pick up Kenta Maeda in that trade. Not many people have talked about that, but they're really looking for a pitcher like that on the free agent market. Didn't work out, ended up picking up Josh Donaldson, but I think this is a good stabilizing point for their lineup.
Yeah, I definitely think Maeda was a great pickup, especially since we saw with the Twins playing the Yankees in the playoffs. You can't just go with all of your bullpen guys. You have to have some good starters in there. I think Maeda is going to fit that role. But my big thing with Boston in that luxury tax, this would have been their third season over the luxury, the threshold of how much they were supposed to spend. And each year, the luxury tax actually increases. So it would have gone to 20% per dollar to 30% to 40%, working all the way up to 50. So each year in a row that you are above the threshold, you're going to get taxed more. So I think it was really important for them to get under the threshold this year, because 40% per dollar over the threshold is insane.
But was it worth it? Was it worth it with the talent they gave up?
Return.
I think Mookie Betts was, I don't know if he was going to test free agency.
He's going to demand a $400 million contract.
It wasn't worth it to keep him long term. And I think it was a tough decision to make, but it was a decision that had to be made.
Do you think they made the right decision?
I thought it was a good decision.
I don't think Mookie would have stayed in Boston after this next season.
It was a good trade to make, but I don't like the return at all. Again, Verdugo.
It's better than nothing, though, if he leaves in free agency.
It's better than nothing. Again, Grattorial is a good prospect. I know Athletics said Verdugo, who I don't know a ton about, has potential to be like a 300 hitter who could be good for like 20 home runs a year. But you got to wonder, like, for example, Dodgers also traded Jock Peterson shortly afterward, which is another major piece. This kind of part of that deal. Trading Peterson kind of clears up some money for them, but like, wouldn't that theoretically be the kind of piece that the Red Sox would need to try to stay relevant? I don't know.
So with that, obviously now they're under the luxury tax bill, and they're going to have some money to spend in free agency before they get back to that. Do we have any targets? Who do we think Boston can go after, as Will said, to beef them back up and make them a contender?
Right now, they're not playing to be a contender. They're playing to be better long-term and rebuild from a spot that they're low, especially with the firing of their manager, Alex Cora. They're losing Mookie Betts. They're losing David Price. They're clearly not in a position to contend. But they're more working for a rebuild, and I think they're not really going to be looking for new free agents over the season.
The big issue, too, is next year's free agent class is not that stacked. Aside from Betts, obviously, JT Realmuto is going to be 30 as a catcher. That's not always the best track set, or best. It's not always the best age to bring in a catcher, even though Realmuto is an excellent player. Trevor Bauer, George Springer, James Paxton, Marcus Stroman, Marcell Ozuna. There's not a ton of high-profile free agents around next year, so I don't know what the Sox do here.
Well, this is definitely a trade that we can continue to discuss in the future because there's, as you said, there's a lot of ramifications, a lot of guys that we're not really sure yet. There's still a lot of minor leaguers being added to it, so it could evolve into a bigger trade in the coming weeks. But with that, it's time for everyone's favorite mini segment of the show, Just the Numbers with Paul Hires.
All right, so now the NFL season's all wrapped up. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through the NFL final records for you, along with the overall records. So still tied for fourth, Jared and Marco, each at 57 and 46. And as much as we made a huge deal about the Dahan curse, Jared 20 and 28, that's around 42%. Not really a curse towards the end of the season. And Marco was 22 and 26 in the NFL. So whether you were following him or just that matter didn't really...
Actively cheering against him? Let us know in the comments.
That being said, Tim in third, he gained a game on the rest of us. He's 59 and 32 overall. He finishes the NFL with the second highest percentage at 29 and 16. Will in second at 64 and 34. He finished 30 and 18, picking the 49ers last week. And I'm in first at 68 and 35 with the top percentage in the NFL this season.
Came down to the Super Bowl on that one for you guys.
And 17 there. Overall in the NFL, we were 132 and 105, which is roughly around 56%. I think we started around
a coin.
We started around 36%, so we turned it around mid-season, but 16 and 9 last week overall, and then your 4-week trend, Jared has gone 10 and 10, Marco 11 and 9 in the last 4 weeks, again just finishing 2 games ahead of the quote-unquote Dahan curse.
You betcha.
Tim and Will each have gone 12 and 8 in the last 4 weeks, and a good reason I'm in first is only 6 losses, 14 and 6 out of the last 20. Clean sweeps are 27 and 10, still continuing to slip down to 73% as everyone picked the Mavs last week. And finally, double whammies.
Double whammy.
Finishes at 6 and 4. Once again, that's the Dahan curse and the clean sweeps in the NFL. 6 and 4. It's not that good.
All right, so now let's get right into the weekly pick'ems. First up, an NBA matchup, the Philadelphia 76ers at the Milwaukee Bucks, 7 p.m. Thursday on TNT. Tim, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, in this one, it's going to come down to Giannis and Middleton because Middleton is a big part of the Bucks game. I think the Bucks are going to pull this one out. Philadelphia 76ers just didn't perform as well as they did in the past.
All right, Paul, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, I made a mistake last week picking the 76ers. They didn't just lose. The Celtics, they got blown out. I think it was over 20 points or something. I'm not going to make that mistake again. I got to take the Bucks. They've only lost 3 times at home this season. Meanwhile, the 76ers have only won 9 games away from Wells Fargo Center.
All right, Jared has the Bucks in this one. Will, who's your pick?
I'm going to go Bucks too. Last time I picked the Bucks, actually, the 76ers just hammered them on Christmas Day. And the Sixers are a really hot and cold team. Never know what to expect from them, but I don't know. I just think the Sixers are in a little bit of turmoil right now. Their bench only has one solid player, Furkan Korkmaz. They got to figure something out sooner the trade deadline. Look up his stats. He's a 3-point sniper, Marco.
All right. Well, take out the brooms, ladies and gentlemen, because it's another clean sweep. I'm going with the Bucks on this one. You guys mentioned it all. Milwaukee, just a better team. Philadelphia, wildly inconsistent right now. All right, so now we've got a college basketball matchup. We've got number 9 Maryland at number 20 Illinois, 7 p.m. Friday on FS1. Tim, who do you have in this one?
Yeah, I mean, Maryland just came off a really good week, beating Rutgers, which is a really good team, and Iowa along with them. I think Maryland keeps it up, and they end up beating Illinois.
All right, Paul, who's your pick?
Yeah, and these two teams have played this season, so this really was the hardest pick-em of the week. Just because the last game they played, it was at Maryland. Maryland won by 1. This time around, it's in Illinois, and that's why it's hard. but I got to stick with Maryland. They're a top 10 team for a reason, and Illinois has been struggling lately, barely beating Northwestern, barely beating Purdue, barely beating Minnesota, and then losing to Iowa. I got Maryland.
All right, Jared, no surprise to anyone, has picked Illinois. I don't really sense any bias in that pick. Jared, he's a college basketball expert. He's going with Illinois. Will, who's your pick on this one?
The one thing I've learned about myself as a college basketball fan is I was always more of a March Madness guy, but since I'm very into the NBA, especially the draft side, this really has led me to figure out I'm only really good at following college basketball when there's a lot of top prospects in the league. There's not many this year, so I don't know much about basketball right now, but I'll go with Maryland because Jared.
A convincing pick.
Yeah,
Will Byerman.
You know what? I'm gonna go with Maryland too, just because not Jared's pick. So I'm going with the Terrapins on that one. Another college basketball matchup, another top 25 matchup actually. Number 12 Seton Hall at number 10 Villanova. 1:30 on Saturday on Fox. Tim, who's your pick?
Both had devastating losses over the past weekend, but I think the most devastating was Xavier over Seton Hall. Really not a good game from Seton Hall's main point guard. Who's the main point guard from them? I believe it was Miles Powell. He didn't really perform very well. I think he had 9 points. It'll be interesting to see how he does against Villanova. But I think Villanova comes back from this one a little bit better than Seton Hall. Villanova takes it.
All right, Paul.
And that being said, that was actually Villanova's first home loss of the season to the Creighton Blue Jays, who have really heated up lately. They've been doing good. Wouldn't be surprised to see them.
Shout out to Mitch Ballack.
Wouldn't be surprised to see them
And
make.
Tyshawn Alexander. Give some love to both.
Wouldn't be surprised to see them make a run in the tournament. That being said, I do think Creighton's a better team than Xavier, and Villanova's actually played a tougher schedule, and they have less losses. They knocked off Kansas earlier. I have to go with the Wildcats.
All right, Jared, the college basketball expert, is going with Villanova. Will, who's your pick?
I'll take Villanova too. I saw them play Creighton over break, and I was super impressed by Gillespie. They're Colin Gillespie, I think, their point guard, and they just played some ridiculous defense. Creighton, by the way, is estimated to have one of the top 10 college basketball offenses right now, especially right now. They're really on fire. So it was good on them for breaking through that, but I was really impressed by Villanova when I saw them live. I'll go with them.
All right, I'm going with Villanova too, so that's a second clean sweep this episode. So you're going to know where to put your money this week at least. So now moving into an XFL matchup. That's happening this week. The St. Louis Battlehawks at the Dallas Renegades, 4 p.m. Sunday on ESPN. Who do you have in this game who we know none of the players?
Yeah, in the scrimmage, I looked it up. They had a scrimmage in the preseason. The Dallas Renegades won that, and since we have literally no real stats to back up any type of opinion or pick.
It's almost like it's a really unqualified one.
Yeah, I mean, takes that to the next level. I'm going to have to go with the Dallas Renegades. Going to go with the Renegades.
Paul, your pick.
Yeah, and once again, XFL, I mean, how seriously do we take this, Is it
very seriously, Paul. It's
like
very official.
Is it like the minor leagues in baseball, or is it just like backyard football? Let's see if these guys can make plays. That being said, there are two former Nebraska players on the St. Louis Battlehawks, Brandon Riley and DeMornay Pearsonell. And so because Bob Stoops is the head coach of the other team, I got to go with the St. Louis Battlehawks, whatever those are.
So Jared agrees with Paul. He's going to go with the St. Louis Battlehawks. No reasoning behind that one. We'll see if there's a Dahan XFL curse, but that's yet to be seen. Will, you're picking this one.
It's weird times we live in. I don't know how long this league's going to last. You can mark me down for 3 seasons of XFL football before the league implodes on itself. And I'll go with Battlehawks because that's a cooler name than Renegades. I don't take this thing seriously at all.
All right,
like
fair enough.
TikTok team or something.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to go with the Dallas Renegades. They, for some reason, Las Vegas has taken odds on this, and the Renegades
they don't have much to do there, Marco.
The Renegades have the best odds to win the title. St. Louis actually has the worst odds to win the title. So I'm going with Dallas on this one.
Imagine having to tell your child you lost their college fund because you bet on an XFL championship game, at which point in like 5 years they'll be like, but Dad, what was the XFL?
Which version? All right, so our last pick'em of the week. Gonna get into the NBA again. We've got the Utah Jazz at the Houston Rockets, the small ball Houston Rockets at 6 p.m. Sunday on NBA TV. Tim, who do you have?
Last time I picked against the Rockets when we had them in our pick'em spread. And this time I'm going to go pick for the Rockets. I think the Rockets take this one. I think the transition to a more of a small ball game is going to improve their record. And I think they're going to perform at a higher level.
All right, Paul?
Yeah, and initially when I saw this, I was thinking, okay, Utah's been playing good basketball lately. I think they're going to take it. But then I took a closer look, and Houston's won 3 straight home games against the Mavericks, which was the clean sweep we referenced.
Luka was out.
Yeah, well, we didn't know it at the time, but
That's why they won, though.
But then after that, a couple easy wins against the Pelicans and Charlotte. Meanwhile, the Jazz have lost 4 straight. 3 on the road, and then their last home game was against Houston, in which they lost by 9. This time they're on the road. There's just too many facts against the Jazz for me to pick them. I have to go with Houston.
All right, so Jared's going with the Jazz there. His reasoning, I like Latin pop. I think Jazz is pretty close to that. I'll go with Utah. Wait, what does the Jazz have to do with Utah again? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jared DeHaan. Will, you're picking this one.
First of all, that's a fair point because I think Utah might be the least jazzy state there is.
Absolutely.
But no, here's the way I see it. Joe Ingles, Donovan Mitchell, and Mike Conley, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Royce O'Neal. That's a group of wings who can shut down Houston's group of wings. And then when you get in the middle, Gobert, he's not a great scorer. He's going to destroy PJ Tucker, whoever they throw at him in the paint. I think this is going to be the first. It's really rough for the Jazz to have to try their brand new Capella-free, center-free system for the first time officially against a team like the Jazz, who have a big who's just going to burn them. Jazz are going to win.
Well, the Rockets, Capella has been dealing with this foot injury for a few weeks, and he'll still be working on that until about All-Star break, probably. And they have 10 wins in the 11 games that they've played without Capella this season. And I think they can keep on winning. Hopefully, Houston doesn't burn me, but I'm going with the Rockets. Well, all right, that is it for episode 21 of the Unqualified Opinions podcast. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notified when we upload videos, and leave your own unqualified opinions in the comment section down below. Make sure to listen to this episode on Spotify and to check us out on Instagram. The links to those are in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will all see you next week.